A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-Cole credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast powered by the OBBM network. I'm John and Sam with Sam. I'm telling you, it's been a crazy couple of days, Sam. I'm glad to be back on the air helping to heal our heroes. So how's things going with you?
It truly has been busy, this time of year. We're very calculated and we've been very consistent in getting out there to heal our heroes, talk about the tough stuff when it comes to wellness and resiliency, all surrounded by this big, thing called post-traumatic stress injury and what that looks like as a first responder. And this past Friday was no different. So let's just start off a huge thank you to the Deep East Texas Council of Governments for sponsoring our workshop in Lufkin, Texas, and beautiful ride down, a balmy 80 degrees. Can't argue with that. That was pretty awesome.
I got to tell you, I'll never get used to those winding roads, man. Those dark, winding roads. I'll just never get used to them.
Well, they're only dark at night. It's pretty during the day. So I love that. I'm like, put a backpack out on me and let's go camping. But we had a very interesting makeup of attendees from, I think the youngest person in there had 2 years on the job, and I'm talking about years on the job, not in age, 2 years on the job, to 43 years on the job. And it was very enlightening, their feedback about how they view the job, obviously the folks that are more new to the job. And we had a whole sheriff's department, a section there, and how those that have been on the job for a number of years, how they've seen the job change. They said, those in attendance, at least their department for the better, recognizing the cumulative stress that the job is taking on us, and sitting in our workshop, was a big step for bringing back awareness and understanding to the department without the stigma. And that's still the the biggest thing in the room.
I respected I forgot his name, one of the old sheriffs out there. He had like 40 years on the job. When we were doing our circle and talking, and he said, and he was honest, and he's like, listen, I'm here, but I don't believe in any of this. It's not my way. It's not my culture. And I respect him so much that he sat through the class, even though he didn't buy into the whole post-traumatic stress thing, because he comes from a different world, of law enforcement, a different generation. But he seemed to engage a little bit, which was nice. And even if the engagement was in that negative sense about not believing that, all the post-traumatic stress and all this, all the breathing techniques and everything else, that you bring down your heart rate and your chemical overload, he still was there for the day and was open-minded about it, which I really respected.
And you're right. And I think the key thing was that while he didn't connect with the stress, the techniques that we teach to bring down stress, he did connect with the stories, because his feedback Yeah, and look, everybody's different, right? That's what we say in the beginning of the class. This is about building your resiliency and wellness toolbox and what works and connects with you.
And I hate to say it, but you know, there's a fine line when you look at an old timer like that with 43 years on a job. One is a different generation. They are built on resiliency, the war era. They are built on learning to live with what they got. They are burnt. They're not in they weren't from the coddling and the it's all about me generation. It was about giving back and to keep that resiliency. So on that aspect, I could see where
Right.
he is not suffering, maybe not outwardly, but his resiliency is probably so strong from that generation. It makes it makes post traumatic stress almost non-existent for him.
Well,
Does that make sense?
he definitely, I think he referred to it as something different,
Right.
not post traumatic stress, but he he he's been able to grow through adversity, which are, you know, some of the stories that he shared, and you know, puts a smile on my face because we did have a game warden. Texas game wardens were in the class, and he called them possum cops. So that's what that was like one of the biggest takeaways, because it's totally a different generation. And the officer, you know, he got a big smile on his face, and he's like, yeah, I know. But you're right. The classes that have this distance in number of years on, the way that the officers look at things and describe things is very different, and their resiliency that they come to the workshop with is very different. The one thing that we can all agree on is that the stress is there.
Oh,
Okay,
without a doubt.
and there's no denying, you know, post retirement, even right before retirement, you know, that these guys, they were not spring chickens, but let's just say they wore their age a lot older than what they actually were.
I was looking at that same thing, and I was like, man, I said, I've aged horribly over the years, and I'm like, man, you're like 30 years old, and you just look like you are my age.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think you know, our guest tonight, he has done a deep dive into some really incredible research on post-traumatic stress injury, why it's an injury, and the health effects that lead to, hey, we need to look at this, and our jobs as law enforcement officers and what we're suffering as injuries, not the outcome of a diagnosis from a book. So Todd is no stranger to a badge of honor. He's a great friend. He and his wife do powerful work in healing folks. And so without further ado, Todd Nunley from the Viking Consultants Group. Welcome to a Badge of Honor podcast.
Welcome, Todd.
Thank you very much, Sam and John. I appreciate you allowing me to spend some time with you this evening. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, you know, you do a lot of different things. You wear a lot of hats. And when you sent me this commentary that you wrote, I really found it fascinating, because John, Jeff, me, and the other John, the team that makes up a Badge of Honor, we have been calling upon a lot of people. It's like, let's call post-traumatic stress disorder what it actually is. It's an injury, and we have a lot of practitioners, particularly around our area in this part of Texas, that are like, yeah, you guys are injured. There is no doubt, because through their practice and from what we've seen and personally experienced, while we know the thing called post-traumatic stress disorder. You always live with your triggers. You always live with what you experienced in the past that caused the injuries, and you learn to manage it. So it's not curable, but an injury is repairable, right? And so let me back up, because I'm so excited about this topic, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So if you could please let everybody know who's watching and listening, your background.
Well, I spent 32 years in law enforcement. I started off as a local officer in Oklahoma. Spent 4.5 years in patrol, 2 years in narcotics, assigned to a multi-jurisdictional drug task force. And then from there, went to the federal system and was a deputy U.S. Marshal in Oklahoma City. Was there in Oklahoma City, or assigned to Oklahoma City, for almost 8 years. And then because of the Oklahoma City bombing and what we went through there, we felt a strong desire to leave there. And I had applied for another agency, which I transferred over and spent the last 18 years, I guess. Almost 18 years with one of the other DOJ entities. So, but anyway, 32 years. And then even after retirement, my first retirement job, I guess you could say, was to as a training coordinator for a police academy in Texas, in McKinney, Texas. And had 3 academy classes that I oversaw and ran, many cadets, and I understand they're all doing well from what I hear. But that, and then decided that wanted to do something different, and then ended up starting Viking Consultant Group, which is where we're at now. So.
And you went on, you've been on your own post-traumatic stress journey. We've talked very openly about that with your wife on another podcast episode. Yeah. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you can go and that's on our page. It's already posted. It brought you to this point where you're trying to bring a lot of retirees together to discuss, bring mental health more out into the open, because law enforcement, as John highlighted beautifully in our workshop that we did last week, is like, we do not have a great track record when it comes to leading up to retirement and after, in terms of longevity of life. And in fact, a lot of departments are banking on us passing away so they don't have to keep paying out. Let's just call that for the brutal, honest truth for what it is. And, your commentary that you wrote, the research that you did, it brought out a lot of key things. And I'm reading this going, well, shoot, I'm like recognizing all of these symptoms. And I know when John said the same thing when we talked right before the show. And so what I'd like to do is, when we come back from break, let's just dive right into that commentary, and let's pick that apart so people can understand what we go through as law enforcement and as first responders, because it's fire department too, and dispatch, anybody that has tons of stress on them. And so we'll have a better understanding. So we will be right back with Todd Nunley from the Viking Consultant Group.
All right.
Lord, thank you.
Move freely. Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical Bill of Rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
to protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, powered by the OBBM Network. Our guest today is Todd Nunley with Viking Consultants, and we're discussing how the chemistry in our brain knocks us out of balance, and over longevity could have adverse health effects. And this is all contributed to post-traumatic stress throughout our careers. And Todd wrote a great paper on this, and he's going to share most of it with us. If you can, Todd, welcome back.
Thank you, John. One of the things I'll start off with is I obviously am not a doctor, and I did not stay at Holiday Inn Express. So,
well, you play one on TV.
Yeah. But I am an investigator, and I spent many years investigating different things. And as an investigator, you dig deep. You want to find all the answers that you possibly can, and you don't want to leave any stone unturned. So, when all of this started, and especially I think really it kicked off whenever I retired, and you don't have a means of dealing with a lot of downtime. That's why a lot of us that are retired, we go back to work and we try to find things to keep us busy. So anyway, when we have that downtime, all of those things that we dealt with in the years of the job, it tends to come back to the surface. And we have unhealthy means and unhealthy manners of dealing with that stress, and myself included. And, we all, none of us are perfect. We all make a lot of mistakes, and Lord knows I've made my share. But anyway, I kept thinking, I felt like I was crazy. Certain things would happen. I would see something, I would hear something, I would smell something, and then it would just trigger almost some anxiety. And it's like I had to get out, I had to leave, I had to go do something. So I kept thinking I was crazy. And of course, some people probably say, well, yeah, he is crazy. But on a serious note, wanting to find an answer and continuing to dig and dig and dig. A very dear friend of mine, who was also one of my instructors at the police academy, older gentleman, he had asked me if I'd ever talked to anybody about this. And I said, no. So he put me in touch with an individual who had written a thesis on it. He was actually getting one of his, I don't know if it was his PhD or what, but this person, his brother was actually a police officer, and he noticed some changes in his brother, his attitude, his demeanor, his health, his general health. So I had called this person and spoke with him, and he laid out a lot of information for me. And then ultimately, he ended up sending me about a half a dozen articles. He sent me his thesis paper, and I'm reading through this going, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. I felt like I'm reading about myself. Mm. And so I asked him, some questions. I said, we hear about military and PTSD. And I said, what about law enforcement? And he said, oh, absolutely. And he said, obviously, this is what you're reading in these papers that I've written. And he addressed it as PTSD, a disorder. Anybody who has ever dealt with any type of post-traumatic stress injury, you understand or realize that you're not crazy, but there's just something not right. And he gave me a lot of information, and things rocked along. This was in January of 20. So almost 3 years ago now, I spoke with him. And I still have those articles, very, very informative. And, but it really didn't, it answered some questions, but it didn't, if that gives you any hint.
Todd, I want to hit on 2 points that okay. you brought up. When you joking around, you said you're not a doctor. Right. And, I'm just going, and me and Sam are having this conversation a little bit before about doctors. Now, most doctors, private physicians, a doctor you go see on a regular basis, right? My doctor knows that I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, and he has never once done any cortisol or any type of blood test or adrenaline blood test or anything that would say, hey, you're chemically imbalanced right now. Let's see what we can do to bring you back into chemical balance.
Yes.
So when we talk about, you don't play a doctor, but most doctors or private physicians are not looking to test for these things.
They're not, because I don't think they know themselves.
They know post-traumatic stress. They know what it is. They know the term,
sure,
but they don't know. I guess maybe it's not their specialty, or they do not think about those things.
Right.
You're a checkbox.
Exactly.
Cholesterol, triglycerides, this, that, the other thing. Boom, send it out.
Yeah. Well, and as things progressed, I continued to dig and want those answers, because the answers I had wasn't enough. And again, as an investigator, I want all the answers I can possibly have to really kind of shore up, to let myself know, if anything, that I'm not crazy. Well, and so reading more articles and more research, I came across an article from a Dr. Chris. I don't know if I can mention his name or not.
Well, let's just call him Dr. Chris.
Dr. Chris.
Yeah.
He is a doctor who's done extensive studies with this, primarily with the military. And I reached out to him. I read his article, and again, I was looking at this article thinking, I'm reading about myself here. So I reached out to him and I sent him an email and I asked him some questions. I'm not afraid to ask him any questions. So I asked him, I said, okay, what's the deal here? I see this with the military. How come you did not include the law enforcement? And does law enforcement qualify for this very same thing that you're doing, or the studies that you've done in the military? And he responded back and he said, absolutely. And he said that I tried to get law enforcement involved in this study. He actually did it in Houston. He tried to get law enforcement involved in it, and nobody in law enforcement would respond to him. They all shot it down.
Shocking.
And I asked him why. Why do you think they did this? And his response was that, one, there's a stigma, and two, a lot of guys don't want to admit it, and then three, a lot of your departments, they don't want to admit it either, that they've got guys who are dealing with any type of a traumatic stress injury.
Well, if you just seen the news the other day, we've lost 14 border patrol agents.
Yep.
In 2022, and the suicidologist, self-proclaimed, I guess. I don't know where you get your degree in suicidology, but he blamed all of those 14 suicides of our deputies on relationships and outside agency issues. It's because they do not want to take they don't want to place that burden on themselves or admit that they are doing something wrong or they're overworking our guys.
Right.
Coping mechanisms outside of the job are broken.
Yes.
Because of the chemical imbalances in our brains. Yes.
Well, and what happens, and I'll get to the meat and potatoes of it. What happens is whenever somebody, a law enforcement officer, is experienced some type of a traumatic event in their career or a cumulative effect over their career, your certain hormonal imbalances occur. You've got your pituitary gland that shuts down. You've got your other glands in your system that end up shutting down to where they're not functioning. Your hypothalamus, your pituitary, your thyroid, all of these things, your adrenal glands, all these things, they sustain an injury. And so it stops functioning like it's supposed to because of that overwhelming trauma in your system that you encounter.
So that was a thing when I read that's like, oh, now they're talking about me.
Yes.
Because what happened from the trauma of 9/11, it took 2+ years to find this out.
Yeah.
Well, actually 2+ years to get a clinical diagnosis, but it wasn't until 2014, after I moved to Texas from the East Coast, that I found out exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
that I was in fight or flight or freeze
Yes.
for so long that and cortisol is our body's natural stress hormone response. It's
Yes.
supposed to kick on,
Yep.
and then you come down, and then everything's good. And then if you have more stress, it kicks on again, but it ebbs and flows. It's not turn the valve and then it stays on. It's not
Right.
meant to do that.
Right.
So when you burn through cortisol, your body runs on adrenaline.
Yes.
And to us on the outside, it feels the same. Like you don't know when you ran out of cortisol and adrenaline has kicked
You don't
on.
have those little switches.
Right.
Right.
There's no
Empty.
switches. There's no engine light
Yeah.
coming on, right?
My
So
engine light's been
it's-
on.
Right. You're just pushing through your day. You're getting through. For me, it was pushing through hard workouts and then going on shift work and the whole thing. And then when I moved to Texas, I went to a functional medicine doctor because it's like, okay, there's still triggers. There's still stuff going on from 9/11. Let's
Mhm.
look at I need to get an overall picture of my health. Okay. I still have these stress responses. And it wasn't until I went into this doctor's office, I got blood work, I did saliva. We're talking not even close to anything that a normal MD, you go for your yearly checkup.
Exactly.
Now, they don't even touch the surface.
Yeah.
And what came back was I got a phone call, and I'll never forget this phone call. Sam, hey, this is so-and-so from so-and-so's doctor's office, and I have your test results. And just to let you know, we'd like you to come in because you're suffering from adrenal fatigue. And I'm like, okay, what's that? I said, well, you've basically burned through all your cortisol. And I don't know how to tell you this, but you're like flatlined.
Yeah.
So my adrenal, I had zero adrenal function at all. Okay, this is all due to the stress and trauma of the job. All traced back to that.
Yep, absolutely.
I had to change. Once you're in complete adrenal fatigue, your whole world changes.
Yeah.
You have got to concentrate on working out differently because I'm very active. It was no more pushing metal, pushing plates, doing heavy weightlifting. I had to transition to more cardio. So I invested money in an elliptical, and diet. And I had to be keenly aware and document, like keep a journal of how I felt. And I was like, just like when I got my post-traumatic stress diagnosis, I was relieved. I was finally relieved. I put another piece of the puzzle onto the board. I'm like, oh, this is why I feel like bleep. This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And it's, I had somewhat of I'll tell you this. I had a very good friend of mine who put me in touch with a group down in actually Central Florida, or South Florida, excuse me. And I had some blood work done. I mean, I've had blood work done before, and I'm like, yeah, what's the difference between this one? He's like, no. This goes way into the weeds. Okay. And when I got the results, the guy calls me back. He goes, dude, you're kind of whacked out. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, your stuff is all over the chart. So that to me was obviously a clue. And so it really kind of coincided with everything that I put in this writing that I wrote, this article. So, I mean, it is a true injury to your hormonal system is what it is. And it causes things to shut down to where you're not functioning properly.
We spoke, we did a workshop in Chicago not too long ago. And one of the participants that was an invited guest works on hormone replacement therapy. And what he has found through their research and everything else is that he's seen a 180 in a lot of the first responders that have gone through that treatment.
Yes.
And they have felt like wow, I thought I was feeling normal back then. This is what the real normal is supposed to feel like.
Yes, sir.
And family members even noticed the big change in their loved ones.
Yeah, I know mine did. I mean, she saw a change. Not that there wasn't still some times that the person doesn't have, some ill effects, because you're still battling that, and the person's going to battle that for the rest of their life.
Right.
But the question is how much,
Right.
And how deep. And I think once you get those answers to these questions and you treat it properly, people are going to see a big change in a person and their personality, their mood, their temperament, everything.
Well, like Sam said, you're living in fight or flight. You're living in fight or flight for all these years. When you come out of it and you start, with reasonable thinking in your prefrontal brain, it's like it's a whole new world.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
Because you have the aha moments. You have the blanks have been filled in. We're having a great conversation about hormone replacement, overall wellness, post-traumatic stress injury with Todd Nunley from Viking Consultant Group. We will have to take a quick break. We will be right back.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance you'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, welcome back to the Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. With our guest, Todd Nunley of Viking Consultants. We're discussing the chemistry and the balance of our first responders. When we talk about our bodies being out of sync and that becoming the norm over years and years and years of built-up stress. Sam, you went to the doctor and you asked specifically for these tests to be done. That's because you educated yourself. And this is where the education portion of what we all do for post-traumatic stress is so important, because a lot of first responders out there do not know the questions to ask when they go to the doctor. I just went for blood work and I totally forgot to ask for all these tests, which I should have, but my doctor's not going to just automatically run them.
Yeah.
So we have to educate ourselves. So that's why reading up and going to these classes and these workshops, you become educated in why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Feel like your anger is getting out of whack. If you feel like you're becoming depressed more or bipolar, you really, like you said, Todd, you don't know what it is. You're going crazy. Maybe it's an easy fix. Maybe it's just your chemical imbalances have to come back in the sync.
Think of it this way too, because when you have, how many people do you know who are retired and you've had conversations with who've had that feeling like they're going crazy? And I can't number the guys I've spoke to that feel like that. And I'm like, have you gone to get any blood work or testing or anything like that? And of course, they look at you like you're crazy, and it's like, no, this is serious. And you stop and think about it. Your system over a number of years, however long that is, whether it's 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, whatever, all of those traumatic events that you go through. Let's say you roll up on a car wreck and you got fatalities inside, or you have a shooting, or you got stabbings, or you've got an officer involved shooting, or whatever. I mean, there's a number of things that affect our mind and what we do. So all of those things, they build and build and build. So we have this cumulative effect in our system. And that's where we are different than the military, because talking to both of those two doctors I mentioned earlier, they both told me the same thing. The military is more of an acute form of traumatic event, whereas law enforcement, it's a cumulative effect.
Or chronic, right? It's a chronic over time.
Yes.
Yeah. we've got there's a couple of things that your story. We've got environmental toxins. Sorry.
Yes.
My dogs this time, John. We've got environmental toxins that also play a role. Whether you are, a special operator, you have exposure to lead. If you're training in firearms all the time. For John and I, exposure 9/11, being 9/11 first responders, we know what we breathed in. We also know we were not told the truth. We're still losing people to cancer. It is insane, and so that's something to watch. But I do want to touch on testosterone because it's become very popular over these last, I'll say 2 years. And most people are not considering how testosterone plays a role in what is going on in our law enforcement and first responder body systems. Now, ladies, I know what you're thinking. You've got to take, we're not turning you into, Mrs. Olympia, right? We're not talking about taking testosterone, growth hormone for to compete in a bodybuilding contest, okay? We're talking about hormone bioidentical, because I'm a huge fan of bioidentical hormone replacement to bring what should be naturally occurring in your body back in alignment. Okay, we all go through life changes as we get older, men and women, and so when we're talking hormones, and John just said he went for a blood test, this is very specific blood as well as saliva, because I just did it again, and just got back my hormone panel. And I have a consultation with the doctor here on Wednesday, because it's not like, oh, I'm out of law enforcement and I have a lot less stress because I moved and now I lived in beautiful Texas and I have a teenager, and things change. And so it is absolutely important for women and for guys to get the hormone panel. And you can't get it from your regular doc that you go see for your yearly checkup. You really have to do some research. And Todd, I'm just going to put your banner up right here, because I want people to be able to reach out. If you're watching, it's on the screen. If you're listening, it's VikingConsultantGroup.com. You'll be able to see it in the replay notices. Critical to functioning our brain, critical to brain function.
I want to add something on to that, and one of our listeners, Kerry Booth, who she suffered from post-traumatic stress, but also her medical condition with her heart also played a role in it. And that was so now no one looks at the post-traumatic stress. They're all looking at the cardiac valve replacement. They're saying this is why this has happened. And this is where two worlds end up colliding. And the doctors are, if we're not educated in this, we don't know what to ask. Kerry didn't know she was suffering from post-traumatic stress at that time because nobody said or looked at her cortisol levels and said, hey, whoa, there's something wrong here. You're way out of balance.
Well, and think of this too. I've had conversation with individuals, and this particular topic has come up many times about testosterone, and there's a lot of false information out there about it. And that is probably one of the biggest things that really annoys me when I hear stuff like that, because it's like, no. Even my own family doctor, my family practitioner, his idea of what is normal for your testosterone levels is not what my specialist says, because my specialist was like, and the first thing out of his mouth was like, okay, Todd, have you read the pamphlet that comes into that ampule of your of your testosterone? No. He goes, neither of most doctors.
Right.
He said, and there's the problem. So, and this is why it's extremely important for guys to go out and girls to go out and get this test done, because it affects you. And some people will say, well, higher testosterone levels mean you're going to have cancer. Okay, well, hold on a second. Why do 18-year-old boys not have cancer more?
Right. No,
because their testosterone levels are way high.
Right. This is about putting your body into the homeostasis, back into alignment that it should be, so that you you don't have the brain fog that comes, that your metabolic system is working like it should, that your stress responses are more modulated, your mood in general, libido, the whole thing.
Everything.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you both a question. We're talking about now primary care physicians. We're talking about hormone replacement, right? Most first responders who are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress will go see a therapist. They'll get the clinical diagnosis, and then all of a sudden they're on antidepressants, or they're getting put on these different medications, which is now changing. Is that a contraindication? Are those contraindications to what your brain, your natural body is going through?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and seriously, and I had lengthy conversations even with my own specialist, and he's like, no, there is a way to treat this and treat it properly. And he said most family practitioners, most doctors don't have a clue how to treat it.
Right.
They just throw a pill at it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they do. They just throw a pill at it. And it's like, well, that doesn't really fix it. You're putting a Band-Aid on a massive gash right there. So it's not fixing the problem.
Right, because that pill will eventually need another pill to combat the side effects of the original pill.
Or we're going to raise the milligrams and everything else. And Sam, you know this because you've done extensive research on this, that most of the chemical balance to get it all back into check through proper nutrition, exercise, breathing, and mindfulness, correct?
And well, I mean, it's a whole, Todd, it's a whole package, which we've talked about before. First, you have to have the awareness piece, because, if you're not aware that you're an asshole, until somebody says, like, hey, you're an asshole. Like,
hey, I wasn't aware. I was an asshole for a long time.
And you weren't like that before. So awareness is the first piece, a willingness to understand that we go through the changes as first responders in our job, as we go through jobs, but and we take that and we wear it, so to speak, on our bodies. We're aware of the physical for sure. It's like, dang my back, dang my knees, dang my hips, but we don't pause and say, oh, I'm taking that stuff to help with my knees. Okay, so I'm getting older. What else could be going on? Let's invest in that. We're quick maybe to say, I need some brain health assistance, whether it's inside the department or outside the department, and but it's got to be, we've got to change it a little bit and look at the whole package, because we can't treat ourselves like we're pieces. Our bodies are in pieces. That's how conventional medicine works. You go to an orthopedist, you go to a heart specialist, you go to a neuro. Last time I checked, our heads are connected to the body, our joints, everything is connected.
Runs off this engine.
Yes, even up here. So if we have breakdown in our foundation, it's not throw a pill at it. It's not go have a surgery and fix it. Maybe you need the surgery. But what do you do after surgery? Do you just have surgery and go back to normal? No, you have to go through physical therapy. You have to go through a process to get back up and running to strength, as we know with what Jeff is going through with his, his injury of his bicep.
Well, it's not one simple answer. I mean, even looking at it again as an investigator, looking at a case, it's not one simple answer
No.
to that. It's a multi-pronged situation that you have to address, and everything. I mean, it's your hormonal system, it's your exercise, it's your diet, it's your mindset. It's a lot of things that go into account there for that.
But it is a willingness to be open to it and
Oh,
not
there is.
not looking at it as
Absolutely.
like, oh my God, I got to do this now.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
the results, when you get the test results back and you have answers and you realize that the fix is not as dramatic as you thought,
Mhm.
it's like, oh well, okay. And then you're like, why didn't I
Yeah.
do this 10 years ago? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
Exactly.
you do.
That's like
Exactly.
when I moved out of New York. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago to Texas?
Yeah. Yeah.
Should have moved out a
Well,
long time ago.
even things like sleep apnea, think like that. Trauma affects even that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wasn't sleeping for a long time, and I found out that I was getting maybe 3 hours, maybe 4 hours of sleep a night. And whenever I
Wow.
did my sleep study, all of that was part of this again multi-pronged situation you're looking at, because even my wife was telling me, you don't sleep at night. You hold your breath and you gasp for air, and then you never get into a deep sleep. So
Yeah,
that's
that
another
sleep
effect.
is key. It's a cascade of symptoms out when your sleep goes out the window. Hey, we have been having an amazing conversation about first responder health and post-traumatic stress injury with Todd Nunley, head of the Viking Consultant Group. We will be right back after these messages.
What is the role of American government anyway? Is the role of government to decide where I can go and where I can't? Is the role of government to work tirelessly to destroy vital infrastructure that keeps goods and services from my customers? Is the role of government to choose who can drive, fly, or ride according to mandated stipulations that threaten my body, health, mind, and conscience? Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice too. Your voice, your feet, your vote, not just at the ballot box, but training to be a poll watcher, precinct chair, judge, or early ballot counter, so you are doing all you can to protect the fairly counted American vote. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America, because my voice
And my voice.
together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, and our guest Todd Nunley, founder and president of Viking Consultant Group. We were discussing first responder health, man, and the time has just flown by. We used words, a lot of information came in, and Todd, we're excited that you were on, because we're getting a comment section that says this is excellent information and it needs to be brought to more first responders.
Yeah, what would you recommend with our few minutes, with our about minute and a half that we have left? You're talking to a first responder that's listening or that's watching. What are the recommendations? What would you tell them?
Go seek medical attention. Especially, first thing is you mentioned this just a second ago. You've got to be willing to undergo the testing and willing to continue whatever it is that the specialist puts you on. I do like the idea of bioidentical, because it is. I like that instead of some synthetic thing you're sticking in your body. But go seek help and talk to somebody, and then whatever situation a person's having, reach out to a friend, talk to somebody. So you may have some information about that. I mean, I'm available. I mean, people can reach out to me. If I don't answer immediately or don't respond immediately, I will. But yeah, there's a lot of help out there, and it's just understanding where to go for that help.
Correct.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Todd. This has been amazing, and I'm going to try and maybe if for somebody that wants access to your commentary that you wrote, because you have a lot of the links to the additional research and where everything came from. I mean, Todd dotted his I's, crossed his T's. It's not like he pulled this stuff out of thin air.
Right.
We will work on getting that out to you. And again, VikingConsultantGroup.com. And yeah, Todd, thank you so much. And we'll be looking forward to more information, coming out as you continue to take a deep dive and discover things that help and heal. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Todd.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right, good night. Wow, well, this science stuff is right up my alley.
I tell you, it is. And I need a boost of energy right now, because that was mentally exhausting, because there was so much information in that 50 minutes that, I mean, just trying to process it all is just exhausting.
Yeah,
So
it's because there's a lot of rabbit holes that you can go down, and that's why I think when you do a commentary, right, like Todd, he includes the links to all of these papers, so
Right.
you can continue. It's a learning process that you have to be patient with, but I mean, like I said, I'm doing this again now, and as the results come in, I'll put some information out there. If you're looking for more information, want to reach out to Todd directly, again, VikingConsultantGroup.com. You can also log on to our website, abadgeofhonor.com, where our partners, First in Wellness, we've got First Responder Stress and Trauma, and we've got the group out of Chicago that are all dealing with hormone replacement.
which I'm going to try.
Yeah, it's bioidentical, folks. There is no synthetic. We're not talking synthetic hormones, and please don't even go down that road. If somebody wants to talk to you about that and it's synthetic, because that's where we do see health effects. Bioidentical, it's called bioidentical for a reason. Okay, so neither John, myself, nor Todd are doctors. We're just saying. Putting that out there, but we do have access to professionals, so go to our website and check that out. You can also go to our website and find out all of the upcoming events. It is, I can't believe 2023 is right around the corner. The 22nd of this month, we are walking the bridge across the world. You can go to walkthebridge.org and find out if there's a Walk the Bridge near you. If you want to start one. It's all about bringing awareness to the suicide epidemic plaguing our first responders and our veteran community. And we're making a lot of changes. We're making a lot of changes come 2023. This is not going to be the last time you hear us talking about this, but we are going to be, we're multidisciplinary in terms of platforms. You're going to see some changes. You're going to read about some changes on where the Badge of Honor podcast platforms are going to go. So as we go forward from this point on, you're going to want to look for a lot more of us on Twitter at A Badge of Honor, the number 1. We are also on LinkedIn. You can hook up with us on LinkedIn through my LinkedIn page, which is Samantha, A Badge of Honor Horwitz. You can do that cool little change. And we're also on Rumble, and you can listen to this podcast anytime on your favorite podcast app. So again, we thank you for joining us here on the podcast week after week, bringing you more information every week on how to heal yourself, how to heal our heroes, how to heal as a first responder community, and to all of our first responders out there. Thank you so much for putting your life on the line every day for us, for your communities, and for our veterans out there and those that serve on the front lines, keeping our borders safe here at home, giving us the freedom to continue to do what we do, speak our minds, fly these flags and other flags. thank you so much. We are always thinking about you. John, take us home.
Man, all I want to say is do your research. Everybody's been affected. If you're a first responder for a day or 43 years, you've been affected in some way. Maybe you're not feeling it bothering you, but go get checked. Maybe your resiliency is up there and you're getting through it, which is God bless you, and that's great. But 9 times out of 10, when we saw in the classes, everybody said that they have changed since they put that badge on or put that turnout gear on. So just make sure you are mentally healthy. Get checked. Get your blood work checked. Get educated on what the effects could be. And if you hit that crossroad, remember, the crossroad doesn't define you. The choices you make when you take that path define who you are. So until next week, this is John and Sam. Love you and peace out.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBM Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request